Hello. So today I want to talk about something you won't hear probably in your university. Well, I never did anyway. I went to university many years ago, studied related arts and music. Um, but I read this in a book um, years ago. So the original idea isn't mine, but it's stuck with me, and I haven't really heard of it. I haven't heard many other people talk about it, but I think it's a really helpful key. So my thesis this today is really this is quite a helpful key to understanding, or how do you measure beauty? How do you know, it's very elusive quality, isn't it? And in music, especially. And this probably could apply as well to the other arts as well. But I'm going to stick to what I know, which is mainly um, music, of course. And it's kind of a theological idea. So it's contained in the Bible, and I think it's quite a helpful way of looking at why music appeals to human beings and why we love it so much. So the idea is this. So God is a Trinity. He's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And likewise, man or human beings are soul, spirit, and body, according to the Bible. And I believe that. And just to explain that a little bit, so your body's obvious, isn't it? Without a body, you're basically dead. So the body, we all understand what the body is. The soul is more what goes in the head. So the emotions, the imagination, the will, the feelings, the emotions, all the things that we experience as a human being, the personality, that's all contained mainly in our brains, I would imagine. That's what I would call the soul. But Christians believe that there is another component, which is the spirit, and they would say that that's the connection we have between God. It's that higher dimension, and all of us know that to some degree. Well, I mean, we're told that we're just machines, and that we've evolved and all this kind of stuff. But most of us know deep down, and the arts stir this up actually. Most of us know down that God has put eternity in our hearts. And there's a kind of knowing that there's stuff outside our realm of experience and rationalization. So things like love, joy, even beauty actually is kind of something that is a concept that is what I would call it is to do with the spirit. Okay, so that's a very simple definition. There's more to that than this. But what I'm going to do is correlate that to music. Okay, and obviously there is more components or ingredients to music than these three. But I do believe the main components of music are melody, harmony, and rhythm. Of course, we've got things like form, timbre, and stuff like that. But the main three, the big three, I believe, are melody, harmony, and rhythm. Now, I'm going to correlate these three to spirit, soul, and body. And I'm going to show you how, through the history of Western music particularly, how the balance between the three in music has changed. Okay, I'm going to give you a little potted history, just to prove my theory, or my thesis. So for example, for example, let's start with let's start in a bit of musical history, and let's relate the two, and I'll explain a little bit how I relate them. So let's go back in history. So wind back. We'll go back. I can't remember which century it is. I think it's the 15th, the 16th century. Thomas Tallis, who's an Elizabethan Catholic composer in Protestant Britain, Protestant England, and he writes. If you've ever heard Thomas Tallis, he writes these amazing church music where you've got interweaving melodies that You know, they're absolutely beautiful. So, you know, he uses what we all know, you know, counterpoint. He uses melodies, and you get accidental harmony happening. They've got a bit of the rhythm is more of a flow of sound. But the main emphasis in that music is melody. It's melody. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because the music is kind of spiritual. It's intended to be spiritual. You know, it's done in church. And the whole ethos of the music really is around that. So it's very balanced. It's very not balanced. It's very what's the word for it? It's very it's over towards melody rather than harmony and rhythm. So melody is the primary driver of that music, I would suggest. Then you move a few centuries later, and we'll move to, say, J.S. Bach. And it's interesting. I mean, this is a very broad brush potted history. We're zipping through time, and a lot of this is, you know, there's exceptions to the rule, of course. But Bach's music, again, he uses a lot of counterpoint, you know, and I love counterpoint. I love melodies intertwining together. It's quite amazing to hear that. You know, look, Jupiter symphonies, you know, Mozart. I think there's at least five melodies interweaving in that piece of music at the end. Anyway, that's an aside. So with Bach, you know, you've got this emphasis on rhythm as well. Nothing like, you know, the Brandenburg Concerto. You know, there's a kind of Baroque and jazz actually have a kind of close affinity in some ways, with, you know, fingered chords and all this kind of thing. There's a kind of there's melody. So the emphasis is on the interweaving melodies, you know, toccata and fugues, those kind of structures that are built. So the kind of architecture is very strong in Bach, and also there's a kind of pulse and rhythm. There's a kind of dance to it. There's a kind of sense of dance, especially in, you know, the Brandenburg show has that kind of music. That's in general. And then let's move. We're moving rapidly through history. Let's go to Haydn and Mozart, which are kind of, you know, kind of clearly the classical period. And I have to admit, Mozart is probably my favorite composer. I think probably because of this balance. I just love the balance between melody, harmony, and rhythm. So to me, Mozart gets it perfect. His music is kind of perfection in lots of ways. You can't really find fault with his music. You know, the melodies are kind of amazing. I mean, the clarinet concerto, that amazing melody from the clarinet, and there's no real clarinet concerto that comes close to that concerto. It's kind of a heavenly music, I would suggest, but that's kind of my bias. That's kind of my taste. So you might not agree with me there. But Mozart does, though, have this amazing balance between harmony. If you look at Ein klein Nacht music and look at the score, I mean, it's kind of pretty perfect, actually, in terms of the way it's balanced, you know, the whole thing, the sonata form, etc. It all is balanced, and the melody and the harmony and the rhythm, they all work together. So I wanted to suggest, actually, you know, that kind of gives you an idea of what, you know, what to aim for in terms of beauty, maybe. So this is just my thesis. Haydn, very similar, of course. And there is counterpoint going on, of course, but it's very much more a vertical relationship. So the harmony is very much vertical. So it's more of a melody with an accompaniment. So the emphasis, again, is generally on the melody. So I would suggest, you know, that's you know, the spirit, soul, and body. It will appeal to the whole person. And then we shift. So Beethoven is the great shifter, of course. He's romantic, really. He's moving into the romantic period, and he stretches things. And there's kind of an imbalance sometimes in Beethoven, a slight ugliness as he pushes the thing. And you will see with Beethoven, suddenly, just probably because I imagine his character was like this as well. You'll see the emphasis on rhythm. So for the classic example, isn't it? Is da, 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 da. I mean, that's a memorable rhythm. And then you've got the Sixth Symphony, da, 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 very much based on rhythm, and with that beautiful melody appearing at the end. Da, 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 da. Eighth Symphony, Seventh Symphony is really rhythmic as well. So Beethoven pulls the boundaries of everything, enlarges everything, pushes the boundaries of everything. So the spirit, soul, and body thing gets a little bit stretched. I would suggest as well, as you get into the Romantic period, it kind of becomes much more emphasis on the harmony. It's kind of on the soul, the feeling, and that would, if you think about the Romantic period, that would really connect with that in that sense. So there's much more emphasis of that's kind of what's the word? Focus. Harmony gets. So I'm not going to go through all the other composers particularly, but as harmony gets more and more complex. But basically, you can only, if you keep adding on thirds, C, E, G, B flat, D, that's a ninth. Then you got F, that's an 11th. Then you got A, that's a 13th. You're stuck because it keeps going around. So harmony got to a point of breaking point. It was like this self-expression. Without the spirit, it becomes a bit meaningless, because it's the spirit really that gives the meaning. It's the melody that really gives the meaning to the music, actually. I believe it's the harmony is supporting, the harmony is expressing the melody, it's the feeling, it's the emotion, and then the rhythm is really important as well in terms of the body. But music basically dies a death eventually, doesn't it? When we get to sort of tonal rows and all that kind of atonal stuff that I learned at university and drove me crazy. I just wanted a melody. I just wanted a nice tune. And music fell apart, and basically it was kind of like melody was cut off, because we even changed the rules of what was kind of like tonal and everything else, and so nothing had any meaning, and it really wasn't. It was meaningless, really. It didn't go anywhere. It was abstract. It abstracted the music to a place where no one could understand it. And anyway, I'm not going to go into that, because actually that's not really that important, because no one listens to it. I bet you won't find any of that particularly on Spotify that anybody's listening to at the moment. But also you can see, just go into popular music as well, you'll see, for example, jazz and blues, especially blues, is very much towards the body, isn't it? The rhythm is the primary driver of that music. The harmony is very simple, very repetitive, so very simple chords, seventh chords, and there is melody. And with jazz, if you look at jazz as well, the history of jazz, it goes through a similar potted history to classical music. Actually, it ends up in the same kind of cycle. So what I'm saying is, you can look at any music and you can see the different kind of emphases that are there in the music. So I think, coming back to my main point really, is I think in terms of beauty in music, I think when you have those three things in balance, then you really, it's quite I believe it's an ideal, and I think it's actually the most wholesome of music as well. So there's nothing wrong with blues and jazz. I love quite a bit of jazz, actually. Dave Brubeck, though, is my favorite, because in some ways he's quite classical. But anyway, so it's not a matter of that's just a matter of taste. But for me, blues is just far too repetitive, and just it's too, there's not enough melody for me. I want some more melody, and it's the same thing with one of my pet hates is minimalism in music as well. I'm not a great fan of it, because it's basically reducing the music, taking the melody out of it. It's kind of taking the spiritual meaning out of it again, where the music is very quiet. To me, it's very wallpapery, and doesn't have a lot of meaning, doesn't have a lot of challenge. The harmony is fairly basic and repetitive, the structures. And I just long for something a bit more complex, something a bit more challenging, something a bit more dramatic, something a bit more classical. But anyway, I hope I hope I've really got this point over that spirit, soul, and body. I really do believe that relates in music to harmony, rhythm, and melody. And of course, there's probably some more complexity to it than that. But I just this is a great. Even if you disagree with me today, is just have a think about it. Think about the music you love and why you love it. So that's all I wanted to say about this, really. So I hope this causes some discussion and some interesting thought on your part. So thanks for listening. I'm sure this does apply actually to the other arts as well. I'm sure artists here will have maybe the light bulb came on a bit, and you're thinking, yeah, that relates to color. You know, I'm not an expert of art, so I'm not going to go into that. That's for you to say. But thanks for listening.